My name is Joseph Nannery. I'm currently a private investigator, and I was a San Francisco police officer for about 33 years. Retired eventually as a lieutenant. 25 of my last 33 years I was in investigations. Mike ships me a lot of cases. One case had a lot of PDFs, and I started looking at this, and I called Mike up and I said, Mike, are you kidding me? I thought this was a joke.
And I remember one day my secretary had brought in this letter, all handwritten, and it looked kind of unusual because the handwriting almost looked like maybe a third grader. I see that the letter is from a prison and says that he's inherited, half of his mother's multi-million-dollar estate.
And essentially he was written out of his mother's will. So he went to Mike and said, can you please take my case?
And I think, I'll look at this. I'm happy to look at it. So the first thing I do, of course, go look him up and find out he's in there for murder. So I think, well, maybe that's not a great start.
I believe he murdered his girlfriend. My first reaction looking at this, I was thinking, oh my God, what's he thinking? This case has got no legs.
But I do know as a lawyer, the fact that someone has done something wrong doesn't make them ineligible per se to inherit. We run these things by people in the office, and I think everyone thought I was crazy that I would take that case and then pointed out all the problems of the case. Well, I knew what the problems were, but I look at this case closer and I say, this is a crazy case for lots of reasons. Among them was that the decedent, she had a lot of property, and she also had millions of dollars in securities. But it turns out she was in a medical facility, and during the time she was in this facility, she wrote out a 17-word will, leaving her entire estate to her 8-year-old grandson. And I thought, an 8-year-old grandson's getting $7 or $9 million, whatever it is. Once that boy were to reach 18 years old, all of that would be his. That didn't make a bit of sense.
Changing her whole will and trust and bequeathing it to her 8-year-old grandson, we found out that she didn't see that often to begin with. And we found out that about 15 years earlier, the decedent mother had a bad stroke. The mother had lifelong issues after that with stroke, with her speech, with her cognitive abilities. Although the mother wasn't able to care for herself, the decedent had changed the trust while she was in a care facility, fighting a UTI that was affecting her abilities to think cognitively.
We found out by having our own medical consultant look at it, in all likelihood that this decedent had a UTI, which causes delirium. It's the same thing as dementia. The difference is that it can be cleared up by antibiotics. We did a lot of research on that. We hired a private investigator too.
I even looked back years earlier from newspapers, and there was a mother in the picture of a local newspaper. She had issues with the kids. When she got mad at them, she would put them both in the trunk of the car and lock them in there. That was like their time out. She also shackled the kids to the bed. So there was a lot of moving parts to this case that explained how and why, eventually in the end, maybe why this kid murdered his girlfriend. I mean, he did not have the best of a childhood.
That's a big problem. You have a woman who's out of it, even though the psychiatrist that determined that is in federal prison.
And he said, there's a little problem with the psychiatrist. And at first I thought he was kidding me. He says, well, he's in prison himself on gun and weapons charges, and he's earmarked, been convicted, arrested by the FBI, and he's going to be sent off to a federal prison. And so finally we kind of had an agreement that interviewing the psychiatrist, who was now a convicted felon, that probably wasn't our best card we were going to bring forward. So as time went on, Mike's staff and his experts were able to see at the point where she changed her will was at about the same time that she had not been medicated for this UTI. Oftentimes the facts or something that's in the medical report or a police report is something we always strive to get.
I did kind of my standard thing as far as the online mock jury trial. When I looked at that online mock jury trial, almost all the jurors were like, there's no way this guy's getting the money, my client, But again, I looked at it and I thought, I can find a way.
He's got that thought, that vision. He's got experts, he's got phenomenal people he works with, jury consultants, and I go out and I speak with witnesses. And even when I come back sometimes with bad news to Mike, they readjust the playbook. They readjust their action plan.
And ultimately, we were set for trial.
So Mike was able to sit down with the judge, explain to the judge as to what was going on.
And the big problem is these 17 words were written on a napkin. Part of what the evidence was that we put together for the mediator was a picture of the napkin. It looked questionable.
I think the big point there was the napkin with the 17 words on it, changing millions of dollars worth of assets in the trust to an 8-year-old. And Mike was able to get a very favorable outcome for his client. We're talking millions of dollars for his client.
We're pretty good at what we do.
To watch the full episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, download the free VeryLocal app.